squandered last night's opportunity to unify the nation. Whether that will actually blunt the calls for Joe Biden to step aside, we simply do not know. And that is where we start this hour with senior political reporter at The Washington Post, Aaron Blake, plus former Obama campaign manager and MSNBC political analyst David Plouffe, and MSNBC columnist and contributor Charlie Sykes. And with me here at the table for the hour, host of Politics Nation on MSNBC and the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton. Charlie, I'll start with you. This was, as I was going to say, it was reported that Trump was not going to say President Biden's name during last night's speech, that he was going to try to stay away from that and elevate himself. He couldn't do it. He went there anyway. Watch.
What this administration, the damage that this administration has done, and I say it often, if you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States, think of it, the 10 worst, added them up, they will not have done the damage that Biden has done. Only going to use the term once. Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time. The damage that he's done to this country is unthinkable. It's unthinkable.
So he resorted to his own to the old tactics. Does Donald Trump's performance last night, this rambling, undisciplined, all too familiar rhetoric, change the calculation for Democrats by underscoring just how vulnerable Trump is, just by letting him be himself and go out there and do what he does all the time?
Well, I don't know that it changes the calculation, but it certainly reminds everyone who Donald Trump is, that this is a man who is incapable of self-control and is capable of the kind of verbal diarrhea that we saw last night. But I do think the Democrats also need to look at him and go, why are we not beating this guy? Why is this convicted felon, this man has been found liable for rape? Why is this ranter and raver? Why is he leading in the polls? And I have to say that the extraordinary thing about watching that was how boring he was in that particular venue. Just briefly, before the convention session started, John Heilman and I were sitting kind of in the empty hall, and we were watching the rehearsal for all of this as they were pumping up the music and the lights. We saw the videos, and Kid Rock. And I remember thinking to myself, all Donald Trump has to come out, all he has to do is just come out and say, I am here. And this crowd was so excited. They were so engaged. It's quite an accomplishment to go from that level of excitement and anticipation to the boredom at the end, to watch these delegates yawning and looking at their watches. So all of this is a reminder who and what Donald Trump is, but also all of his flaws and vulnerabilities. But Democrats need to ask themselves, okay, we know all of this. We've known this for 8 years. Why are we at the moment we are right now?
Such a good question, David. Let me pick it up and ask you, because you've got the New York Times columnist David Brooks calling Trump's speech, quote, one of the truly awful and self-indulgent political performances of our time. David French called the speech, quote, boring. He said Trump has many flaws, but he's rarely boring. On the last night of the convention, he was. Charles Blow added this: Trump couldn't resist returning to his familiar darkness, thus wiping out the entire effort to rehabilitate and hide the real him. Did you see anything, David, to Charlie's point? Did you see anything in Trump's speech last night that should make Democrats feel optimistic that he is still the same old guy, still promoting the same kind of hateful ideology and doing it in the same degrading tactics?
Yeah, well, I think, in the other, waiting you in the finals is a team you can beat. You just have to make sure you've got the right team coming out of your conference. And so I think that in presidential politics, there's only two layups: your announcement speech. Now, most people who make their announcement speech don't become the nominee. And then if you're the nominee, your convention speech. It's really awfully hard to screw it up. And he did. And so I think now we should remind ourselves, however, that the vast, vast, vast majority of people who are going to be voting this election, including the vast number of swing voters, certainly people who are considering whether to vote at all, aren't going to see the speech. They may see some clips. And to the extent that they see that he was unhinged and, he said he was going to unify and he didn't, that's helpful. the big moment that needs to be circled, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or somebody else facing off with him, is September 10th. That'll be the time where you have the biggest audience. And a reminder, most people who don't even watch the debate will experience it in the 24 hours after that on Instagram, TikTok, and other social media sites. So no, it was a blown opportunity for Trump. And I think it reminds Democrats that this is somebody who can be beat. Now, we know in 16 and 20, he was a terrible vote getter, didn't get 47% of the vote nationally, narrowly won the Electoral College in 16, winning a bunch of states under 47, and, led to historically bad election outcomes in 18 and 22 as for his party. So this is not somebody who's in the Hall of Fame of vote getting. However, he is a couple of points stronger this time than he was last time, more like 47, 48 in some of the battlegrounds than 45, 46. So what Democrats have to do is pull some vote off of him, get Democrats more excited, win a bunch of undecideds, pull vote off of him. And so listen, if everybody who was going to vote in this election was forced to watch that speech last night, some of those people would flee from him. And that's the challenge in the presidential campaign, is you got to prosecute a case against him each and every day, each and every hour, so that you win what exists out there, which is still the majority of people who don't want a return of Donald Trump to the White House.
Rev, to Dave's point about putting your best team forward, obviously the question right now about the position that the Democrats find themselves in, just let me share with you, just in the last couple of hours, I mean, last night you had Senator John Tester join the chorus of senators calling on President Biden to step aside. In the last few hours, we've had Zoe Lofgren. Now she's the third member of the January 6th Select Committee. Obviously somebody, again, very influential, certainly somebody well-known in Democratic politics. You spoke to the president recently. Give us a sense of what the landscape is right now, and whether or not the more names that come out, the more high-profile names, adds weight to his decision.
When I spoke with him last Monday, he was assuring me he was in the race. He was proud of what he had done. We talked about some things we did together in terms of the civil rights community, me and others working with him on the George Floyd executive order and other things. And he said, Al, I'm not giving this up. I want to finish the task. I need another term to do it, and I want you to hear from me. I'm in. And this was Monday. I think that people forget how committed he is to certain principles and to certain achievements. But at the same time, I think that, and I and others would say, that we're not going to push him off the stage or call for him to be removed, but we'll say to him we need to make a sober analysis of whether or not we can continue that work and how best we do that. And that choice I'm willing to live with whichever way he decides to go. I think that it is very, to me, disturbing that you have so many Democrats getting in the way of talking about how horrific last night was for the Republicans by using today to tell their president to step off the stage. I mean, all the Democrats ought to be on the message of what Donald Trump did last night, rather than trying to, for whatever reasons they are, some of them trying to play politics in their own states and districts, to get in the way of the message of today. You had people, I mean, the most anti-immigration, anti-rights convention I've seen. Hulk Hogan is your new symbol of the Republican Party, and you're trying to deal with a president who, at his worst day, delivered on many of the things that we definitely needed. I was very disappointed in some of them. I see the Congressional Black Caucus, Hispanic Caucus, a lot of them who were the ones that gained the most movement have not come out against this president. Maybe it's because we feel we have the most to lose. We're not drinking Kool-Aid, but we're certainly not going to take shots at people that never backed away from us.
Aaron, for their part, the Biden campaign put out a statement saying, quote, last night the American people saw the same Donald Trump they rejected 4 years ago. For over 90 minutes, he focused on his own grievances with no plan to unite us, no plan to make life better for working people. Americans know exactly where he wants to take this country. Donald Trump's dark vision for the future is not who we are as Americans. That does not sound like someone who's getting out of the race. What is your reporting telling you about the Biden campaign?
I mean, I would say that it's important to note that nobody ever entertains the idea that they're going to drop out of a race or says that they might not run until the moment comes when they actually do it. And certainly there is some signals from, at least close to the Trump team, if not at the highest levels, that these are things that are at least being considered in a way that they weren't before. I think the convention last night and Trump's speech in particular, it's kind of two takeaways for Democrats. One is that if you're looking at this speech and you're saying, wow, that was kind of a mess, he rambled, he ad-libbed, 75% of this speech was ad-libbed from the script. So he didn't really drive a coherent message. It was very dark. It was not uniting. You look at that and say, that's a guy we can beat. He's more popular than he was when he was president, but we can bring that down. But I think the way a lot of Democrats look at this right now is, yes, that shows the opportunity here if we can have somebody who can actually drive that message. And I think right now, as President Biden is dealing with his COVID, that it's a difficult situation for him. But even since the debate, we haven't seen him out there on a consistent basis, really driving a message, even in the interviews that he has done, driving a consistent and coherent message against former President Trump. And I think that's really what a lot of these Democrats are hoping to get right now. And that's why they're willing to entertain these alternatives.
Charlie, let's go back to the speech for a moment. There is an argument that some voters are suffering from Trump amnesia, that we may have not been paying attention to him over the past 4 years because we've wanted to kind of just ignore him and forget everything about him and what he has done. And they've forgotten how truly traumatic and deeply weird Trump's presidency was. Then you had last night's speech reminding us again of that. Take a listen.
They look like yachts. I said, we have to take the bow and we have to make it a little nicer and a little point at the top instead of a flat nose. And the people at the shipyard said, this guy sort of knows what he's doing. We have the most beautiful ships, right? I could stop wars with just a telephone call. We will have our next Republican convention in Venezuela because it will be safe. I got along very well. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, I got along very well with him. The press hated when I said that. How could you get along with him? Well, it's nice to get along with somebody who has a lot of nuclear weapons. I think he misses me, if you want to know the truth.
So if there's anyone really who has lost complete mental acuity, it is that guy. I mean, let's just be honest about it. And the question is, we haven't been paying attention to him for the past 4 years because we've wanted to forget him. But could refreshing voters' memories about what Trump is really like snap voters out of this kind of like so-called Trump amnesia, or have we all become numb to it?
Well, this is an excellent question. I've been thinking about the fact that, well, the feeling that we've fallen into some sort of vast memory hole over the last few months. Do we remember who this man was, what he has done? And you certainly felt as if the Republicans gathered with complete amnesia. The fact that you have just nominated a convicted felon, all of the things that we know about him. So I think that is true. And as David mentioned before, though, we do need to keep reminding ourselves that the vast majority of Americans did not see that. So this is the task between now and November, to make it very, very clear who Donald Trump is, what he has done, and remind people about that. Now, that, I think, is a key issue that Democrats need to think about, because if it is two elderly men, dueling accusations of that you're losing cognition or that you are too old, it's going to be fuzzed up somewhat. If the Democrats change their course, then the focus can really shift to what you just mentioned. We have been embroiled in this big discussion as Joe Biden lost his fastball, is he too old, where we have not focused that spotlight on, and what's going on with Donald Trump. This is not the same guy that we saw in 2016 or 2020. He's clearly losing something. There's something going on. There is this narcissism that